Hello everyone, it is Scape and welcome. If you're like me, then you think about Heroscape a lot. Some people might say it's a bit unhealthy, and those people are correct. If you're like me, then you might have looked at another miniature from a different game and say to yourself, wow, I should make this into a custom for my Heroscape game. People are gonna love it. And that's what we're gonna do. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a custom unit for this beautiful game we all love. Community customs are a big part of Heroscape's history. Ever since the discontinuation of Heroscape in 2010, the community has done their best to keep the game alive by infusing the Heroscape roster with custom figures. A custom figure is a miniature, mainly from other games, that were given their own army card to be used on the battlefield of Heroscape. In 2011, the Heroscape community came together to create the Valhalla Customs. This group has released wave after wave of community-created customs. Figures for these customs were found from other tabletop games, such as HeroClix, D&D miniatures. These customs were heavily playtested within the group to ensure quality gameplay on the battlefield. They are the reason that community creations are widely accepted in Heroscape. But, for now, let's get back to creating our own customs. We're going to start our process by selecting the miniature. This process gives me the same dopamine as when I was a kid, picking my starter in the old Game Boy Pokemon games. You can choose from thousands of miniatures from other board games such as D&D, HeroClix, Zombicide, Marvel Crisis, and so on. This does not include the millions of 3D printable figures out there. When selecting the figure, it's good to keep in mind their scale. If the figure is too large, like some dragons out there, how will that impact the physical mobility of the figure on the board? If the figure is too small, how will that impact the visibility of their line of sight? Heroscape has a sweet spot of a range of 20 to 32mm for humanoid figures. Obviously that will vary figure to figure. As you can see, there's some goblins and there's some giants. But ultimately, choose a figure that you are comfortable playing with on the battlefield. The figure I'm going to be using for this video is going to be Shabhad Warleader from Starfinder's Planet of Terror. I selected this figure because the model has caught my attention. I mean, it has 4 arms and a slick looking gun. Selecting a figure doesn't have to be a complex. It could be because you like the visual aspects of the figure, or the figure could be filling a need for your army, such as you need a new orc war boss. Just remember, this is probably one of the most funnest parts, selecting the figure. Now that we have our figure, I want to split this next section into 3 elements that I use when creating my customs. Those elements being creativity, playability, and balance. These 3 elements will help guide you into making decisions when filling out each section of an army card. Our first element is creativity. Creativity is where you express the flavor of the figure, such as their name, their background, and other attributes. Knowing the direction that you want to take your figure will help you in the later steps when deciding their abilities, stats, and traits. Some figures can be easily categorized if they come from existing IPs. For example, I have this Commander Cobra figure. Commander Cobra's dreams is world domination. He can have similar dreams as the Valkyrie General Utkar. Other figures have very vague identities and require you to give them more attention to detail. Once it's time to put the information on the card, we can move on to the next element. The next element is playability. This element is what makes the gears turn in our custom. Here we determine the card's stats, attributes, and abilities, using of course the flavor of the figure that we decided when our creativity step. We begin by selecting the Valkyrie that your hero will follow. Now this step can be skipped for now. Sometimes you might not know right away and can determine later on who is your figure going to follow. You might even start with a Valkyrie and feel that maybe your figure doesn't fully embrace those characteristics and change the general, and that's fine. Let's move over to the left wing of the card. We're going to start with species. A majority of the time, a figure's species is given, but we don't like to assume here at Scape or the Corpse, so choose the species you feel best fits your miniature. The species selection is an important one as it determines various lines of synergies within other armies when it hits on the battlefield. This next little part can be a little bit complex, so bear with me. Here I will explain the 5 types one can choose from. This will vary from using a singular or multiple figures. If your custom is a singular figure per army card, then it becomes a hero. From there you decide whether your hero is common, uncommon, or unique. By selecting a common type, you're able to have multiple of the same figure under one card. Each additional figure is charged to your overall army point value. For example, there's nice cool looking road guard Dumotev or Dumotefe, I can say in French, Dumotefe, will cost you 25 points. If you want to run 2 of the Dumotefes, it was going to cost you 50 points. And you add 25 points for each figure after that. You are only able to move 1 figure per order marker revealed on the Dumotefe army card, and common figures normally have around 1 life. Uncommon heroes are similar to common heroes because you can have any number of uncommon heroes in your army. The difference is each uncommon hero will require their own army card. Reason being, uncommon heroes tend to have more life than common heroes. Example of this, Pharaoh Troll has 8 life. If you have 3 Pharaoh Trolls under one army card, it's going to be difficult to track the life of each of them. That's why each uncommon hero requires their own army card. Some tips to track uncommon hero per army card is coloring the bottom of the base of that specific Pharaoh Troll. And the last type of hero is a unique hero. Unique heroes are strict 1 copy per army card. This restriction tends to make the hero's abilities stronger than the common or uncommon heroes. Now if you have multiple different figures, but they have similarities such as they're wearing the same uniform, they fight for the same army, or it could be the same figure just different poses, you can group them together into what we call a squad. When making a squad you must have at least 2 figures per army card. So far we have seen it go up to 5 figures per army card. Keep in mind the number of figures per squad will have an effect later on when applying stats and abilities. The same rules for common heroes and unique heroes also applies to squads. This next section is the class. The class of the figure can be described as the role or the occupation. Is your figure a warrior, an assassin, a guard, a soldier, and so on. After that, you choose their personality. This describes your figure's behavior. Is your figure terrifying, precise, valiant, angry? I do want to add that species, class, and personality will each open doors for your figure to synergize with other cards that care about these attributes. An example, if your hero is valiant, then they might lead the 4th mass into battle. At times you can find the class of the figure easily if they come from an existing IP, or look closely into your figure and figure the figure out what is their class. Are they holding a long rifle? It could be the sniper class. As well as the personality, you can use the background that you made for the figure and find out are they a valiant hero or are they more of angry and want revenge. The last rectangle here is the size of the figure. You can measure the height by stacking hexes on top of each other until it reaches the highest point of your figure. This includes any wings or antennas. Or if your figure will require a double hex, it tends to lean towards being large. This next section becomes a little bit more complex when trying to explain it from a squad's perspective and a hero's perspective. So for simplicity reasons, I will be explaining it from a hero's perspective. Later down the road, I can make a video showing it from a squad's perspective. So let's move over to the right side of the army card now, to this little box. This is the stat box, which will consist of the figure's life. Next is the movement, how many hexes can this figure move per turn. Following that is the range. The range is the distance between this figure and the figure it wants to target for an attack or an ability. Next is the attack, how many base attack dice are rolled when attacking. And lastly is the defense, how many base defense dice are rolled when defending. I say base because the amount of attacks and defense dice rolled can be altered by other abilities. Underneath is the points, but I will talk about the points later. Personally, when assigning stats, I start with the range. Does your figure have a long range weapon such as a bow or a rifle? Or can your figure wield magic or blast fireballs? Then this can be taken into consideration when selecting the range. My figure has a rifle, so I'll be doing a range of 6. If your figure has neither magic or rifle, then range 1 will probably be the best selection. Next I move to the attack. The attack power can be determined by your figure's traits. If your figure is aggressive and enjoys a good fight, then you may want to give it a more higher attack. Is your figure more calm and prefers a more tactical way of fighting, then your attack might be a little bit lower than most. Shabhad here doesn't like to get into fist fight even though he has 4 of them, so I'm going to give it an attack of 3. Keep in mind, higher range units tend to camp on advantageable hexes to gain height advantage, so Shabhad's attack of 3 might always be an attack of 4. Next is the movement. The average figure movement is 5. If the figure looks like it has some weight on it, then it might be 4. If your figures are a little bit more agile or is on a mount, then the figure movement could be 6. But for Shabhad, I'm going to use 5. After that, we can look at the defense. The defense of a figure is a bit tricky as it ties with the health of the figure. High defense means higher survivability, unless it's one of those days for the Deathwalkers.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just...
I'll be using 4 since it's a middle ground for unique heroes. It gives them just enough defense to defend off against some squads. The last thing you want is your figure to reach the middle of the map and get mowed down by men in trousers or blue men with arrows. The figure's flavor can also play a factor here. If your figure is made of stone, more than likely it's going to have a higher defense. The same goes if your figure holds a big shield. It's small little visual aspects like this that help bring a little bit more life to your figure. Speaking of life, as mentioned before, the defense of the figure can be linked to the hero's life. Having a high life and a high defense means your figure is going to be a little bit unbeatable, and we don't want that. So I would give Shabhad 5 life. He has a high range, so it means he's going to stay away from engagement on the battlefield. But once the opponent gets their pesking hands on him from him shooting them down all day, he has 4 defense and that can keep him alive for a bit, but eventually, if he does get overwhelmed, he will be defeated. Now that we're done with the stat box, let's move to the center of the card. This is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. Here we will give our figure its unique powers and abilities. It's like a blank canvas right now. It's difficult to find a place where to start. So you can ask yourself, what role is this figure going to play on the battlefield? Will it rush into enemy lines with powerful special attacks? Will it traverse the sidelines, being more supportive with auras? Is it going to bond with your other figures? Or is it your finisher, ready to strike when you need him the most? I suggest you look at current Heroscape designs to get a good idea of where to start. It is okay to borrow abilities and special attacks from other figures. Many times I borrow Mimbring's fire breathing attack. I changed the name and a few numbers, but overall it's the same concept. This is also your opportunity to experiment with new things. What if your figure is afraid of heights and you can't move up elevations higher than 3? But there's super skilled warriors on base elevations. This is what makes the card a custom, because you added your own creativity and flavor along with the game knowledge to it. So I'm going to fill out Shabhad's abilities here, just to give an example of how I would go about it. Shabhad's first ability is called Looming Presence. If a cadet figure you control attacks an opponent's figure that is within 6 clear sight spaces of Shabhad, the opponent's figure rolls 1 less defense die until the end of this turn. For this character's background, Shabhad is a cadet that is part of a space organization that hunts down threats on different planets. Shabhad has a deadly aim and that is why he was recruited. He is to support this team. His opponents were briefed on his deadly precision and unpredictability. They should assume that they are in Shabhad's crosshairs at all time. Hence the opponents being a little bit more worried to fight when Shabhad's on the battlefield. That is why they roll 1 less defense dice. Shabhad's next ability is actually an attack. Quad Fist Special Attack. Range 1 Attack 2. Shabhad may target up to 4 adjacent figures with Quad Fist Special Attack. Roll for each attack separately. Shabhad may target the same figure twice if there is only 1 legal adjacent target. We have to put Shabhad's fist to work. If he finds himself in a situation where he's surrounded by figures who want to seek revenge on their comrades, he's not afraid to get all 4 of his fists dirty. I borrowed this move from the monks with a little bonus for being able to hit 1 target twice if no one else is around. There's nothing worse than receiving a poor triple-decker sandwich. Shabhad's last ability is Move as a Team. After taking a turn with Shabhad, you may move any friendly cadet within 4 clear sight spaces of Shabhad, up to 5 spaces. Since the plan right now is to have different hero cadets, I wanted to have a way to move at least 2 figures per order marker revealed, similar to a squad of soldiers moving through the field together. You can see from this example, Shabhad's background placed a little bit of influence on his attacks and abilities. this doesn't always have to be the case. You can easily use existing abilities and attacks that best fit your playstyle. Now that this army card is filled out, it's time to move on to the last element, balance. The element of balance is very opinionated, as everyone's definition of balanced figure is different. What I'm aiming for in this section is for enjoyment for you and for your opponent. There's no rule saying your figure can't have 10 attack and 12 life with a cost of 5 points, but that figure risks the game being unfun for your opponent. It's about respecting the time being set aside for playing the game of Heroscape. Of course, there are occasions for strong units with set stats like a special scenario or an arch enemy game. The great part is you can make up stronger versions for your customs for those moments. Now, after reviewing your custom army card, it's time to assign the most difficult part, the point value of your figure. If your stats and abilities are reflecting numbers like that of Marvel figures, then those figures are going to be your pool for reference. It is always good to assess your playgroup's power level to see where your figure is going to lie on those scales. My group does not utilize Marvel or C3G figures, but do not take this as your figure is weak because of it. Shabhad is an all-around figure. It has a nice range, a respectable attack and defense. It has a light touch of bonding. I will compare it to the figure Keimanawa and use 120 points for its value. Now I know many of you will not agree with my assessment of the figure point value, but that's okay. This is why playtesting is the most important part of balancing and overall custom units. Does this figure feel slow? Are its abilities not really cutting it for you? Or maybe it feels a bit strong for its initial point value? These questions and more can be answered by playtesting. I also suggest talking to your opponents after the match to see how they felt about your figure. They have a different point of view going up against the figure as opposed to you controlling it. Sometimes you might feel that your figure is too powerful, but at the end of the day it could have been a non-factor for your opponent. Do not feel bad if your figure did not perform as expected. Some of the reasons could be a bad matchup, and that is something even official Scape units have to endure. Your figure doesn't have to be perfect. It is okay to have some weaknesses. So what do you look for when playtesting? Before starting your game, set certain goals for your figure to accomplish. Can your hero take down opponent's hero? How durable is your figure on the battlefield? Each figure will have a different goal corresponding to the role in your army composition. If you currently don't have anybody to help you playtest, you can do solo playtesting. YouTuber Slugscape did a great video on how to solo play Heroscape. That is a good way to get some reps in before hitting the battlefield with your friends. I highly suggest you take a look at that video once you have reached the playtesting stage of your custom unit. I will link the video in the descriptions. Do not feel bad if your unit did not perform as expected. We take the figure back to the lab and try to fix your concerns. For example, after playtesting Shabhad, I noticed his special attack was not used as much as I wanted him to use it. His range allowed him to play at a distance, therefore rarely being engaged to adjacent figures. So I replaced it with a new ability called Sleight of Hand. After attacking with Shabhad, roll a 20-sided dice. If the result is 11 or higher, Shabhad may attack again this turn. Shabhad cannot attack more than 3 times per turn. I really hope this outline is a good starting point for when you begin your custom creation journey. Do keep in mind these customs are not tournament legal, so have fun with them. Explore the boundaries of Heroscape and add your own twist to them. Please leave in the comments below any tips I didn't cover. There's no perfect formula for this topic. The more we can refine and outline, the better it will be for our community. If you enjoyed this video or got anything out of it, leave a like and subscribe if you want more Heroscape content like this.
Nice.
It is I, Skateboard, and I'll see you on the next one.